Now, you might recall from my last video that the masculine frame is composed of two elements, having an internal frame of authority and an internal frame of reference. Now, I'm going to be talking about the second. And if this is the first time you've seen me, I'm Nate Wegford. I'm a masculinity and mindset coach. I've been doing coaching for over 20 years. I've coached literally hundreds of men to become more successful in their relationships, in their business, and in their physical health. And I've created a modern day rite of passage that can help you to do the same. An internal frame of reference ultimately says that your value, what you decide about yourself, comes from within. Your sense of value isn't decided by anyone externally. And in fact, you choose how to respond to any circumstance based on yourself in response to the element outside. The outside doesn't dictate or govern your feelings, your emotions, or how you respond, I should say, or how you react in any way. Perhaps it's easy to even start with what it looks like when you don't have an internal frame of reference. An externally referenced person will seek validation, approval, acceptance externally. They will seek to evaluate how important they are, how valued they are by other people's reactions. They will become immersed in someone else's reactions such that their internal state is heavily influenced by another person's behaviors. If a person in front of them is being angry or sad or negative, they automatically become reactive to that external person. An internally referenced person decides how they're going to respond. They feel calm within, they feel centered, they feel connected to themselves, and they're able to choose their emotional state, able to emotionally regulate. They know they're valuable because they've earned it. They've found a way to be disciplined in the areas that bring them joy, well-being, happiness. They give a lot of their time to that, and they've built up this relationship with themselves, ultimately, that is nourishing and fulfilling, such that they don't place a big emphasis of having that need fulfilled by someone externally. Also, more than likely, they've healed their relationship with their parents. And I mean, this is a whole video for another discussion, but the way that you're raised, if you're given the ability to make your own decisions and have your own consequences, and if you feel that you belong, but even when you make mistakes, that you're still loved, also there's a degree of separation from a child or a boy from the mother early on, so he learns discipline and he learns that it's okay to experience discomfort as he moves towards the things that he wants to create in his life, as he meets his fears. He will develop a degree of independence. And so if you're still hooked in almost the dynamic of that reliance upon that motherly love, and you haven't yet developed the independence to be associated with the creation of your own love from within, then more than likely you're going to still be preserving your external referencing. As a child, that's an important element. A baby is heavily reliant on the well-being that it receives from the mother, right? And so it's appropriate that the baby should be looking at every response and every reaction of the mother to make sure that the baby is safe. At some point in time, that boy, once the baby grows up into a boy, it has to be taken away from the mother and to stop seeking the mother's approval and validation and to start recognizing that the love that the baby has been experiencing from the mother can now be sourced from within. So the boy now recognizes that he can now develop and cultivate his own sense of well-being from within, and he's no longer reliant on external sources for that well-being. That's very important because when a man or a boy trapped in a man's body, let's say, has not cultivated this sense of an internal frame of reference, when he's still seeking approval and validation from the feminine or even from men, then he places power outside of himself. Other people external to him have control over his emotions. They have control over the focus of his mind as well. Or they have control over the man's sense of identity, of his sense of value in life, of his sense of belonging, welcome. Essentially, he's entirely reliant on something external, so he's completely disempowered to create his own reality in a way. If you cannot direct your own life, and if you're heavily reliant on someone else for your well-being, what that leaves you is in a place of victimhood in a way, where you're completely reliant on external factors which are highly volatile, because in reality, aside from your mom and maybe your father, no one's going to love you like they did. As you get older, you realize that people have their own challenges, issues, traumas that they're dealing with. And if you're reliant upon them constantly being a source of well-being in your life, you're more than likely to be sadly disappointed. Because when they're having a bad day, or they need to come back to their self, or if they are no longer present in your life in some way, for some circumstance, then you will feel an intense sense of loss, betrayal, all these triggered emotions because you never got to develop and cultivate love within yourself. And so that love can easily be taken away. Now, in a relating dynamic, if there is, let's say, a less than mature man seeking validation, seeking love from the feminine, then in any moment, he loses his center. When she's giving her love, he might feel good. The moment that she's having some sort of emotional chaos in her life or some sort of challenge, then more than likely the undeveloped man, the less than mature man, will feel that he's not in control of his own well-being, or he feels a sense of loss when love is taken away. And then he might start to overcompensate by reaching, by somehow trying to validate or prove himself, or trying to buy the woman's attention or affection. And this ultimately tells the woman that this man does not value himself. He's seeking value externally in denial of the value within himself. He's seeking love externally in denial of the love that he has within himself. That ultimately means that he will then begin to place those external sources of love as being more important than his own love. He's willing to sacrifice and compromise himself in the pursuit of something external. Whilst you're pursuing love, validation, acceptance, approval externally and denying it within yourself, you're never truly in a position of self-love, self-respect, and self-honor. And you will always deprive yourself of the fullest of expression of love, because love can only be reflected back to you to the extent that you allow that for yourself from yourself. You find ways to diminish, to deprive, and you find yourself, the receipt of love, and you'll find yourself in loops constantly seeking love, but then in some way denying, rejecting, or pushing it away when it actually comes to you. So it's very important that you develop yourself. And if in the last video I mentioned how you develop yourself as an internal frame of authority, the path to developing an internal frame of reference is quite similar. You heal your traumas, you develop your independence, you start to have a ritualized self-care, devotional practice where you consistently show up for yourself as a priority. You stop sacrificing yourself to gain others' approval, love, or affection, and you start honoring yourself as the biggest positive influence in your life. You start to build a healthy relationship through consistent right action for your own well-being. You build trust for yourself in your ability to provide for yourself. And you have this sense of earned accomplishment at some stage when what you've applied your energy, time, and attention to starts to materialize and manifest. And then you feel proud of yourself. And then you feel that your discipline and your focus and your decisions that were consistently right have brought you to a higher state of well-being. And then you realize that you can create your own well-being. And the other thing that this sometimes happens, well, for me, a catalyzing moment was actually when I went through a breakup. When I found out that I was attached to this external person for love, affection, validation. And when that relationship ended and we broke up, then I felt the pain of that loss. But when I survived that pain of loss, then I realized that it was survivable. Then I realized I could go back to creating it for myself. And that ultimately was a seed in awareness that helped me to develop this whole modern day rite of passage that I've now created in my community called Sovereign Brotherhood. If you haven't checked that out already, check out the comments below in the captions, and you'll see a bunch of resources that are going to really help you to develop yourself in a masculine frame. The last part that I want to add before going on that path is we talked about the internal frame of authority, the internal frame of reference. The strength of your frame is how strongly you can maintain these internal frame of authority, internal frame of reference, whilst remaining in integrity and relative to the intensity of what is trying to take you out of that internal frame of reference and internal frame of authority. Meaning, if all of a sudden, there's someone that's emotional outside of you and then you automatically become reactive, that's a weak emotional frame in the sense of being externally referenced. If you start to look to someone else as being to make the decisions for your life when you're meant to be the authority in your own life, then it's a weak frame of authority, which represents, having a weak masculine frame. A really important element that I defined in that was having integrity and being able to endure intensity whilst holding frame. So if, for instance, you start to lie, deceive, make up excuses, something like that, to protect a lie or an illusion of having frame, that's not frame. Frame is when you can hold yourself in integrity, speak your truth, be in alignment with your words and actions towards that truth. That's true frame. If you're faking it, you have what's called a false frame of masculinity. And I'll probably talk about the false frame of masculinity in further detail in a video to come. Has this been useful? If it has, then I encourage you to like, follow, share this particular video to someone that could benefit from this. But I encourage you to go deeper in the study. This is an area that if you find yourself lacking in developing yourself in your effectiveness as a man, whether it's in a relationship, whether you're wanting to date or find a new partner, whether you find yourself that you're not showing up in a consistent way, in a disciplined way in your business or in your fitness, these are all problems of your identity and your masculine frame that when you cultivate that, you start to become more dominant, more assertive, more confident, more consistent, more aligned in your actions, and you start to create life in your terms. If you'd like more help with that, go check out the captions below, join the Sovereign Brotherhood, and I encourage you to also check out my Sovereign Power program, which goes into much further detail on what a masculine frame is, how you lost it, how to get it back, and how to set you on an empowered trajectory to create yourself as an extraordinary man. So I encourage you to check out my next videos in the series about developing masculine frame. And these include your emotional frame, your mental, physical, spiritual frame. And we go into subsets around that, which include financial frame, sexual frame. So this is really precious information that not many men in the space are sharing. I'm obviously sharing it openly here with you now because I think it's absolutely essential that every man on this planet is equipped with the knowledge and the wisdom that they require to be effective in their role. And in doing so, we will create a better humanity because we'll have men that are bringing order to the chaos and the distortions that are happening in our reality right now that require strong men to stand up, lean forward, and to set us on a new path. Thanks for watching.